What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Leo Podcast Tech segment, where we talk about all things tech. I'm your host, Kevin Munoz, and in today's episode, how motorized bicycles are outselling electric cars and the potential to transform urban transit, coming up right now. So while doing my daily research on what's hot in the tech world, I stumbled across this article by the New York Times with the headline, "The popularity of e-bikes isn't slowing down," to which I'll link in the show notes. Now, when reading this headline, I immediately thought, hell yes, finally. And this is because I've always thought that not only is the potential for the adoption of e-bikes as a society something that I can see happening quicker than electric vehicles, but would also be a lot better to own in urban places where traffic and commuting in general is everyone's worst nightmare. Not to mention the numerous benefits to the environment the mass adoption of e-bikes would bring by reducing everyone's carbon footprint. So anyways, the article opens up with a man by the name of Monty Paulson, a building energy consultant in Vancouver, British Columbia, who used to drive his car 5 times a week, and during the pandemic, he decided to buy himself a bike, like many other people did during this time. But unlike many other people, this was a RadWagon. That's the name of an electric cargo bike from Rad Power Bikes, a top-selling e-bike company. Now, for those of you watching the video on Spotify or YouTube, you can see this looks more or less like a normal bike, except longer because it's a cargo bike. So you have space in the back for things like your groceries or even your kids, as the video they provide on their website shows. They have an attachment where 2 of your kids can just chill in the back, or whatever else you want to put there. Of course, it also has more wires than your average bike because of the 48 voltage lithium ion battery, your charger, and of course the motor. What I like about this bike is that it's electric, but also just looks like a regular bike at first glance that you can purchase in orange, black, or white. What's pretty cool and immediately stood out to me was that in the middle of the steering wheel, you have a little backlit LCD screen that displays the fuel gauge for your electrons, an odometer, a speedometer, pedal assist level, a watt meter, which shows how much power the motor is outputting at any given time. And it even has a 5-volt, 1-amp port to charge your phone or portable electronics on the go, as well as front and rear lights with brake light indicator functionality. So it's a pretty sweet bike coming in at a price of $1,899, which is pretty pricey, but compared to some that can go up to $10,000, it honestly seems reasonable for what it offers. I would love to, however, see more affordable e-bikes on the market so that they can become more accessible to those who really need them, like undocumented folks who continuously commute to work or college because they can't get a driver's license in their state. So one thing we'll hopefully see as e-bike adoption picks up is the affordability and accessibility of it as well. You're listening to the Leo Podcast. I'm Kevin Munoz. This ad break is brought to you by yours truly. If you enjoy the show and are looking to further show your support, and if you already haven't done so, then head on over to patreon.com/LatinaAmericaneo or my website, latinaamericaneo.org, to join the growing Leo podcast community and receive numerous benefits and bonus content for supporting your favorite podcast, because the learning doesn't stop with this episode. There's also some awesome merch on my website, everything from shirts to coffee mugs and tote bags. All info will be at the bottom of the show notes. Now let's get back to today's episode. Now, one thing that does immediately come to mind with that big of a price tag, however, is theft. Bike theft is one of the most common types of theft in the US, so I was curious to see if RadWagon had any solution to this. Now, after doing some research, I found a video on their YouTube page, and it looks like their solution to secure your bike from being stolen, while, say, being in the grocery store, for example, is what they're calling a U-lock, and adding a cable to it for longer unattended periods, to which they go on to explain how the cable could be cut by a wire cutter, but it could be enough to deter a would-be bike thief. Other than that, they just suggest other locks. I don't know about you, but honestly, I'm not satisfied with their solution because, well, it's not really a solution since they're just telling us to lock our bikes. Now, if I'm going to be paying almost $2,000 for a bike, I expect it to come with at least a tracking system with some kind of alarm. Maybe they'll make it an accessory or implement it in their future bikes, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Now, getting back to Mr. Paulson, who goes on to say how he purchased his e-bike as a personal experiment to see how he could lower his carbon footprint, but stuck with it because it's really fun, and now makes 90% of his trips on it. So for those who don't know, I live close to Princeton, New Jersey, and grew up going to the public schools there. And I'm telling you this because I still spend a lot of my time on the Princeton campus. And let me tell you, since the pandemic, I've seen a rise in not just e-bikes, but also electric scooters around campus. Clearly, there's a big shift happening, and wouldn't be surprised if the mass adoption of e-bikes happens before electric vehicles. According to the market research from NPD Group, the pandemic bike boom boosted e-bike sales 145% from 2019 to 2020, which is more than double the rate of classic bikes. And apparently, the industry experts put the number of e-bikes Americans brought home in 2020 somewhere around 500,000. In comparison to the 231,000 all-electric cars in that time period, a rate of about 2 to 1 according to Pew Research Center. Growth for e-bikes does not seem to be slowing down. Deloitte projected that between 2020 and 2023, 130 million e-bikes would be sold worldwide. So at the moment, e-bikes, not cars, appear to be the world's best-selling electric vehicle. This type of trend could potentially transform urban transit. According to a 2019 study done by the analytics company INRIX, in New York City, just over half of all car trips are 3 miles or less. So why not replace that trip with a nice short e-bike ride? Now, other countries are already ahead of the United States when it comes to incentivizing people. In Britain, for example, the government is offering tax credits for e-bikes and funds local efforts to expand bike lanes. In Norway, which has a national bike network, car usage dropped among e-bike users when they learned how far they could go on one. However, in the United States, this is a different story. E-bikes do not qualify for commuter tax benefits that cover public transit and parking, and as I mentioned before, still remain expensive, with prices ranging from less than $1,000 to nearly $10,000. A provision in Congress would offer tax credits and commuter benefits for e-bikes, mirroring incentives in countries like France. That's all for today's tech episode. Let me know what you think about the rising popularity of e-bikes over electric cars. Are you sold on getting an e-bike? Send me a voice message, email, or DM through my socials with your answer, all found below in the show notes. I'm Kevin Munoz, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please give it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and a follow on Spotify. It helps me tremendously in order to bring more awareness and educational resources to our community. For more information and to stay up to date with what I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram at LatinaAmericaneo. And if you need more information and resources, you can visit my website, latinaamericaneo.org. I'm Kevin Munoz. This has been the Leo Podcast, and I'll see you next time. This podcast is not investment advice, and I am not a qualified licensed investment advisor. All information on here, including any ideas, opinions, views, predictions, forecasts, commentaries, suggestions, or stock picks expressed or implied are for informational, entertainment, or educational purposes only and should not be construed as personal investment advice. Conduct your own due diligence or consult a licensed financial advisor or broker before making any and all investment decisions. Any investments, trades, speculations, or decisions made on the basis of any information found on this podcast, expressed or implied, are committed at your own risk, financial or otherwise.